Hey, welcome everybody from around the globe, wherever you come from, whether it's morning, noon, or night in your time frame. We are joined here at the Singapore FinTech Festival. I'm Dan Gay. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of BlockCerts Blockchain, and we're bringing you a very interesting interactive presentation today with a panel of very prestigious individuals here. And we're joined to start with Jean-Marc, who's the chairman of the Script Foundation Company. And we'd like to just welcome Jean-Marc here.
Hi, everyone.
Good to see you. And then up on the left-hand side that I'm seeing here, we've got Daniele Minci, who is the president of Fusion STX. Hi, Daniele.
Thanks for inviting me on the stage in Singapore.
Absolutely. It's a good stage here.
Lovely. We're in Rome, Jean-Marc's in Montreal. I'm in Victoria, BC.
I'm in Denver,
Colorado, and San Diego.
And I'm in San Diego.
That's a world stage.
That is a world stage.
Yes.
So then we've got Tiffany Johnson, who's our chief of staff and who has been coordinating a lot of the Singapore FinTech Festival. So thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Dan. Welcome, Jean-Marc.
Yeah,
Good to be on the world stage here with all of you distinguished men.
Yes. And then we have Mr. Tim Vasco, who's our chief executive officer, founder of BlockCerts Blockchain, who's been guiding us through his vision, and amazing what the last 6 months have brought to us, Tim.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty wild to see all this emerging, and I'm super excited to talk about Jean-Marc because he's been here on this journey with us for quite a while now, and so we're excited to hear about Script and have him discuss the vision of Script and the Script token and what we started on so long back. So yeah, let's go.
Let's go. Well, if you can just share your screen, Tim, and then just to start off, if Jean-Marc, if you could tell us about the genesis of Script Foundation and what really started all of this. It's very unique in a nonprofit environment. So tell us a little bit about that.
Thanks very much, Dan. I'm really excited to be talking today about the Script token. And that ultimately, the genesis of the whole project was trying to, we were looking at all of the various crypto assets which were out there. And we wanted to make sense in terms of what would produce in terms of which assets had longevity, which assets had true value, while at the same time have functionality for its owners, for its users. And ultimately, the key things that transpired for us when we were analyzing this was looking at all of this and saying, okay, so we've got the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and others which have great technology. We all know that Bitcoin brought us the blockchain and being able to solve the problem with the double spend. And ultimately, that's fantastic. And Bitcoin is probably here to stay, although there is one fatal flaw to it in that other than people being comfortable in terms of owning that asset, there is no underlying security or assets that really is behind it. It is a digital gold, if one could say, but there is no real asset per se. Consequently, when we embarked on the project, we wanted to find a way to ultimately have a token which would have real assets behind it to give users the confidence in owning it, knowing that there was something of substance behind it. And it wasn't just hype, or it wasn't just a trust us type of feeling from it. At the same time, we saw so many projects that raised a lot of money, and ultimately that money went to the founders, went into development, but ultimately there's nothing backing that token per se for the long term. And that was our main key objective. And that's what ultimately, when we partnered with Tim and the team over at BlockCerts, we saw the value of what the BCert token was all about in terms of being able to bring to market a true utility token where there's utility to it, but at the same time was providing users with a sandbox in terms of the whole blockchain, which BlockCerts had built. And that's what brought the project together. And I'm sure you'll be asking in terms of the mechanism in which it operates and ultimately the foundation behind it. And it'll be a pleasure to really outline those key aspects to it, which makes the token absolutely unique.
Well, I think one of the unique things, Jean-Marc, and maybe you can touch on this, is exactly that, which is there's all this, functionality, opportunity in the market for using a token and building business models and digital assets and digital asset distribution, but without substance behind it, being both utility, as you say, the asset backing, as you say, and I don't know how to describe it, but you will, non-profit based agenda. Like let's face it, most everything in financial today is picking up that margin between the transfer value and the asset. There's a huge $1 trillion services industry built around just that, right? And what the Script Foundation allows us to do, or allows you to do with the Script token, is create a much more streamlined ability to move those as I understand it, to move those assets into exactly where they belong, creating true value on the upside, as well as provide the utility to actually get it there. Is that somewhere close to what we're talking about with the Script token?
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim. You put it pretty well in terms of succinctly. And ultimately, in order to understand how all of this interacts with each other, and it's pretty complex, and we wanted to simplify it as much as we could. The first thing to truly understand is, as you put it very succinctly, is that we created an independent nonprofit entity which effectively governs the Script token. And that's a Script Foundation company. Ultimately, the way we've set it up is every single token that is minted by the Script entity is ultimately sold to the market. There's no free tokens that are being granted to founders or this or that. It was important for us to have a structure where all the value is going to the Script Foundation. Ultimately, what happens is, as a token is minted, it is sold in the marketplace at a given value. And I'll get into the release structure in a moment. But ultimately, it's important to understand that the value, once a Script token, we'll call it a treasury token, that goes into what we call a reserve account. That reserve account is managed by that nonprofit entity. It's not monies that goes into the pockets of founders, but it actually goes into a foundation, which is nonprofit and is governing on behalf of the community. And then ultimately, those monies go into this reserve account and form an asset backing for effectively the token. Ultimately, the user has the functionality of the token, which we can get into, which goes from KYC, being able to have smart contracts, all of these great things. So there is utility to it for the user, but the user as well is comfortable acquiring that token, knowing that there's actually assets which underpin the value at which it actually trades. And that's really important.
I think one of the things that I want to point out real quick is how your background, okay? Because the thing that people our audience who's listening to this need to understand, you use the word complexity. And certainly the technology and the ability to do this is complex, but you came from that complex world. You're in that complex world every single day. Private equity, banking, like that's been your career. So all of these things didn't just pop up one day and you went, oh, this would be a good idea. Like you're doing this from a perspective of deep, like inside knowledge of what happens in these back offices and how these institutions work in the billions of dollar arena, aren't you?
Indeed. I spent the first part of my career sort of as a managing director from one of the largest Canadian banks. And ultimately, the objective was working with sort of complex financial transactions and seeing how the banking world operated. And for the past 10 years, I've been the CEO of a large Canadian private equity group where we manage in excess of $4.5 billion and have a very diverse portfolio. Ultimately, as you said, this whole genesis for us of looking at and me getting interested in the whole crypto world and saying, how can we make sense of it all? And how can we all put it together and make sure that we've got the stepping stones for something which is not for hype, but is to build it slowly but surely for the long term. That was really important to us in building this project. And ultimately, the tech was very important, but the architecture in terms of was the glue to make it all work.
Right. And that's one of the things, you know, you and Danielle and I have had the opportunity to talk through, which is these complex structures that have nothing to do with tech. They're complex kind of legal, structural, financial flows, really, that happen every day in the marketplace, like every single day. And then marrying that with the complexity or the utility, if you will, of technology that allows that to happen. And also, this is what's really fascinating to me about the Script Foundation and the nonprofit idea, reformatting the way transactions work and really getting a return on investment from the investment as opposed to just the management of those connections. And that's what I think makes Script so powerful and unique.
And I think what is really unique, as opposite to what happens in the crypto space, it is the corporate structure. Because in blockchain and crypto, there's a lot of emphasis and focus on the token and the tech, but very little focus on the corporate structure. So you see many times a great idea, great utility, great team, a great idea, a great business model, but then 40% of the proceeds are given back in the pockets of the founders, for example.
Yeah.
And what is the entity that mint the token and eventually ensure that the token is managed according to some rules or due diligence? Nothing about it. There's always one company that's issuing the token, the market believes is going to be nice, and then eventually is going to be bought. What is different here is to try to approach the market with from a different angle, not only put the token value in front, but also keep the corporate structure aligned with the values that the token brings to the market and keep the two things in sync, as well as the technology, which is the underlying asset.
And you're creating true trust between blockchain and marrying with the nonprofit and having that corporate governance as well, which is phenomenal. It's unique in the marketplace for sure.
Yeah. So Jean-Marc, on that, the word corporate keeps coming up, and that's a really important, nuance in this, which is, and what popped into my head as you were talking about this, Danielle and Jean-Marc, you're probably one of the leading people in the world who can literally pinpoint why the heck did JP Morgan get into this, right? Like they just announced, oh, we got 100 people in our blockchain division after Jamie Dimon saying, oh, Bitcoin's the next tulip thing, right? And I think you saw that when you built Script. You saw that there was validity, but as you said, it's complex. But corporate structure, maybe talk a little bit about that. Throw that out, and this release mechanism and all those kinds of things. Because I think the world needs to understand how this actually works. There's a lot of us haven't been in the shoes that you've been in.
Sure, my pleasure. Ultimately, as you said, the corporate structure, the release mechanism, all very key to making script absolutely unique out there. Ultimately, the corporate structure, we've talked about the nonprofit foundation company that governs all of this. So ultimately, every token is sold by this entity. The proceeds go into a reserve account that is managed independently with an objective of having that pool of assets grow in value and increase the value of the asset backing of the token. So quite unique. But it's important as well to understand, okay, so how many tokens can be issued? Most people, their claim to fame is we've got a set number of tokens and we actually going to start burning tokens. So that's how we create value and we create scarcity. And consequently, if there's enough hype around it all, then boom, it's going to go up in value.
Right.
And that's their business model. Ultimately, our business model is actually a business model to effectively build a network which can grow to scale and does not scare anyone in terms of growing to scale. So every token, as I said, is being sold at a market price.
Right.
And for example, the first release was 100 million tokens to be issued at 50 cents effectively per token. Only when all of these tokens are sold and the market price continues to stay above this price and reaches the next threshold, which for the script token is $1, can new tokens be issued? And in that release, we've got 50 million tokens, which can be sold at $1. And then again, once all of that is sold, once the trading price goes up to $1.50, then in that case, you've got 75 million tokens that can actually be released. Ultimately, what that means is that we wanted to ensure, and this is the most critical part of it all, wanted to make sure that there is always a demand and offer equilibrium in the marketplace. Right. We didn't want to flood the market. We wanted the market and the token to actually grow at the speed at which the market wants it to grow. For us, it doesn't matter if it takes us 6 months to get to a $3 token valuation and have sold lots of tokens, or if it takes us 5 years.
Right.
We're here for the long term, and that's the key thing. And it's really by having that release mechanism and by ensuring that the foundation cannot flood the market with treasury tokens that we ensure that the volatility of the trading price is kept in check. And that's what people are looking for. They're looking at other crypto assets and they're saying, geez, I don't want to hold that asset for everyday purchases, for everyday transactions, and that, hey, tomorrow maybe I'm really lucky and it goes up 10%. The next day it's down 4%. Up. That volatility is not for everyone. That's great for a speculator, but for everyday use, for a utility token, not an instrument of speculation, but an instrument of utility, that doesn't work. And that was the really key thing for us in making sure we kept essentially supply and demand as much as we possibly could in check. And we actually have a way through this release mechanism in terms of actually ultimately ensuring that if there is too much speculation in the token, that yes, we can calm things down and that we don't want the price to escalate too quickly. We want it to have a nice transition. And the value ultimately is the value of the utility. And that the more people actually own that token, are exchanging that token, or using the utility of the token, then yes, it's natural for there to be more value in the token because of that network effect.
Right. And I can point out, which is really interesting too, that you didn't just stop with this token. That was kind of the whole genesis of working with you at BlockCerts, which is to build that smart contract mechanism. So this is truly when we say utility, it truly is a utility. You can use this thing. You can do a big deal. Let's take a development project that could be 2 years out, and you can do that with confidence. You can actually build those functionalities from everything from all your documents into your payment releases and things like that through that entire mechanism. Or maybe even an M&A deal, which, as you know, can take quite a long time to go through due diligence from start to finish, and a lot of demarcation points of what needs to happen next and dollars that transfer next and things like that. So escrows, commercial real estate. I mean, just think of all the big things that actually happen that can't stand that kind of volatility. Also need mechanisms to tie what that transaction flow is from paperwork to asset transfer. Maybe we're shipping something around the world. I don't know. But, all that kind of big stuff that happens every day that build economics was not really suited, is definitely not suited for this high volatility world, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You and I spent many hours discussing it. And ultimately, that's the reason why when we embarked on this project and we're looking, look, we had the framework that we knew what we wanted, but we also had a vision in terms of what the tech behind it should be. And a simple example where ultimately, when we're looking at what is the mechanism to actually approve a transaction, where personally, I find that the mining process for Ethereum or Bitcoin or others is actually an extremely inefficient use of resources. Yeah. It's extremely costly and it doesn't add much value. Consequently, the proof of authority and compliance that we have within BlockCerts, actually, that makes sense. People can be sure that there is trust in the system, yet you do not have the same weight and same cost and resource burn for the approval. This is a simple transaction. Some people may say, well, if you do that, if you have a central authority, then you're not truly sort of diversified or you're not the distributed and there is a central order. But to me, that's not the real value of what blockchain is all about. The blockchain is
also, the centralization that you've done, though, really, when I think about it, you've centralized the script token, but a lot of other things could be going on here, right? And so when you look at the flow mechanism and what the true utility of this is, you also have the opportunity to say, well, certainly script has this backing and this from the foundation and the control, but your transaction certainly doesn't need to be centralized. It can be all over the world. It can be, you can go cross-chain with this thing. You can do whatever you want to do. And the efficacy, as you said, of proof of authority and proof of compliance is always there. It's in the chain. It's private yet transparent. It's provable. And that's the important part. It's a proof of authority, as you said, right? And so in reality, you've created this mechanism with script. And I want to point out too that you actually stepped up and built this. You didn't raise capital to do it. You didn't this was built, and it wasn't a let's go out and raise a bunch of money to build this. You built it and you put it out there and you're like, here you go, world. This is something and a way that an infrastructure can exist. And I think that's really critical as well to point out.
Can I add a topic there? I think it's a super important. So because what you explained before, Jean-Marc, it's kind of a very, very innovative, let's say, layer to protect against pump and dump in a way. Because if you expose your token to secondary market, so you're free to list your token to whatever exchange in the world. So because you don't have to be bothered or concerned too much of what's going on in the back. By the way, today we have recorded a very, very nice session with Chris Wharton, and we extensively discussed about the exchange and somehow a kind of misconceptions and sometimes also misbehaviors by secondary markets as a whole, especially in crypto. So I think it's worth spending a couple of words about the true protection of the utility token that you have designed conceptually and also that we have built on the blockchain to prevent any type of excessive market manipulation on the secondary market.
Thank you, Daniele, and that you're absolutely correct. And as Tim pointed out, because of my background, ultimately, we were not interested in a get-rich-quick scheme. This is not meant to be a pump and dump. In that we specifically structured the release mechanism to prevent this. In that if anyone wanted to try to use this token to affect the pump and dump, even if it wasn't us, if it was a third party, the mechanisms are in place to prevent it. And that if they escalated too quickly, then more treasury tokens would be sold, and that cash is not going into our pockets; it's going to that treasury reserve account, which provides more asset backing for the token, and that asset backing is to the benefit of the community. Consequently, everything is anti sort of get rich quick scheme and pump and dump. We wanted something which wasn't necessarily a stable coin or stable token. We wanted something more, in that we believe that as the network grew, there's a network effect and there's network value. Consequently, that's reflected in the value of the token. Consequently, we're not pegged to another security like a USDT pegged to the US dollar or other sort of tokens or crypto assets which may be pegged to gold or others. We want it to be on its own merits, but have that asset backing and ensure that it actually would stand the test of time. Ultimately, as well, one of the things that we actually quite appreciated about the BlockCerts blockchain was the fact that it was an ERC20 compliant token, meaning that we could operate on BlockCerts and have our nodes, which were able to approve the transaction extremely efficiently, extremely quickly, and very cost effectively, but at the same time, as Tim alluded to very briefly earlier, could go cross-chain without any issues. And that gave us flexibility, gave us comfort that we had something which was robust, which could scale. And that for us, we can effectively attract hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. It doesn't really matter. The architecture is there to absorb it in a structured way and in a very efficient way.
And you know, you point that out, Jean-Marc, and I'm glad you said that, because not only do you have the nodes, but you can containerize all this. So somebody comes in and they say, I want to do a $50 million script deal. They don't have to depend on just script to run all the technology and everything. They can lift that up, deposit their own container anywhere they like with all that tech and the tokens. So they hold a heck of a lot more than just a wallet. They hold every bit of functionality that script has in their container. They're controlling this entire ecosystem you've created, right? And the tokens and the flow all within their own node, if you will.
Very much so.
So,
yeah.
You know,
and a growing amount of utility and functionality that continues to expand every month.
Yeah, it gives us an incredible amount of capability to, especially these transactions that are larger. And a couple things, and I know we're kind of running out of time here, but we did do this conversation with Christoph. But the other one that we did, and I'd encourage everybody to think about now and start connecting the dots, is the DFSO, the Digital Financial Services Observatory, who's putting this out there for the world, global financial standards. Like this is what you're starting to see. You're starting to see organizations like Columbia University and the Gates Foundation who say, look, we need these standards. You're seeing entrepreneurs and very knowledgeable people like Jean-Marc, organizations that are involved with billions of dollars saying this is what we need. So I'd really encourage people to think about that. Script is very unique. It's very powerful. We looked at a lot of models before building this out, and you even more so, Jean-Marc, on building this. So I think that it's really important to understand what this asset-backed utility token is. It's not easy. It's complex. But as you said, you've made it as easy as possible, and it's available. It's ready to go.
Absolutely. Currently trades on X markets, and looking at adding additional exchanges. And we've been doing some private transactions ultimately as well. So ultimately, off to a great start. So we're very excited. Ultimately, I think that we're very interesting time. A lot of people ask me in terms of what is the future of these tokens, and I think that look, we'll continue to see other great tokens that are created. I'm very supportive of the various frameworks which are being established. Obviously, you've got some scammers out there. That's unfortunate, but hey, those will always be there. It's important to understand what the true utility is, and how are they structured, and how does it make sense? And ultimately, if you're looking at a project, and the only way that the project can make sense is more akin to a pyramid scheme, well, you got a problem.
Yeah.
So
it's good to be true. It probably is, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jean-Marc. It's super exciting. We're going to do breakout sessions over the next few weeks. We're going to bring in some of the experts that are in other spaces to create new panels, and we hope you'll join us for some of those as Script gets out there. And obviously, scriptfoundation.com. People can reach you there, I believe. Absolutely. And we'll have this streaming video up. We'll have it up on the Script site, so anybody who missed it during the conference can start seeing this, and hopefully you'll join us again in Hong Kong in January as well.
January, right?
Absolutely, a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. And as I always like to say, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay digital with your asset-backed utility tokens.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Jean-Marc.
Everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.